Welcome back. We are now joined by Councilman Jason Williams. Councilman Williams was born right here in New Orleans. He spent much of his childhood in Georgia and decided to return home to attend Tulane University for his undergraduate and then Juris Doctor. Motivated by his experiences representing indigent defendants in law school, he soon started his own law practice focused on criminal defense. Councilman Williams served as a judge in Orleans Criminal District Court, making him the youngest assistant district attorney in the city's history. Welcome to the show, Jason, Mr. Williams. Let's get right to it, okay?
Good to be with you, John.
All right. So, first of all, in your own words, what does it mean to you to run for this position? And what is the impact that you hope to have in this seat if elected as DA?
I think it's time for the American legal system and the legal system in New Orleans to pivot from a culture that seeks victories for prosecutors to one that seeks victories for victims, making sure that every decision that's made, whether it be for a misdemeanor or a felony, the question needs to be asked, is the public safer for what we did today? And that's the change in culture I want to bring.
Thank you. Next question. What do you see as the most pressing issue facing the position of district attorney, perhaps beyond what you've just said?
The most pressing issue really comes down to something that is more broad and covers a lot of areas, which is trust. There's a huge amount of distrust of the criminal legal system. Although folks who become police officers and become prosecutors, they do it because they want to serve their communities. Because of some of the leadership choices, because of some of the process and some of the cases that have been had, the trust has been broken. So I want to create a conviction integrity unit that's going to look back and confront the sins of the past. If a person's been wrongfully convicted, we want to correct that. We want to look at those Ramos cases as well, but also want to increase transparency and have public-facing dashboards so that the public can grade my paper every single day using their computer to see who was charged, who was not charged, what was diverted, what was the final resolution, how long it took, not every 6 years, but every single day. And that level of transparency, I believe, can really bring us back to a place where people believe in the system and believe in their DA.
Next question. What do you believe is important for the voters to understand that distinguishes you from your counterpart in this election?
You know, at the end of the day, it depends upon your orientation into the system. If you believe that prosecuting more people, giving them maximum sentences in every single field of crime, if that is success, then you need to vote for my opponent. But if you believe that you want a DA that's going to prioritize on violent crime, murder, rape, armed robbery, and the other things like addiction, mental health crises, we're going to divert those things and get people the intervention services they need. In 2008, my opponent served as DA, and violent crime was spiking, and a number of simple possession of marijuana cases, based on a City Business article, were upcharged to make it appear as if the office was succeeding based upon number of convictions. That's not my brand of public safety. That's not my brand of criminal justice. I want to focus on what matters most, and I also want to make sure that we do it fairly. Make sure Brady is turned over so that we're not paying $500,000 each year to the wrongfully convicted, to make sure the convictions stand up. And that, I think that's what separates me most, that orientation, knowing that these decisions affect lives, but also affect taxpayer dollars, because the budget, I see it every year. We just finished the budget of the City Council. It costs us $2.75 million just to staff one 40-person pod at the current jail. And there's a number of people sitting there just because they can't afford bond, not because they're violent, not because they're unsafe.
What I'd like for you to do, and one of the things we try to do on this show, all the different shows about all different areas of law, when it's not an election special, is help Joe Blow, Susie Q out there, who is not a lawyer, understand some of the areas of law that they don't, hopefully they don't have to get exposed to. You mentioned something about diversion.
Yes.
A lot of people, they don't know what that means. Explain what you means, especially when it relates to prosecuting crimes.
Thank you for that, John. So, police officers make a case. They refer that case to the DA's office. The DA's office then has the discretion, or rather the choice, to decide what happens with that case next. The current DA is taking 90% of those cases and pushing them to court. What I want to do is take those cases.
They push them to court. You mean they're going to prosecute
They're
the
gonna
guy that was
Exactly.
arrested and charged with whatever?
They're going to prosecute. There's going to be motion hearings. It's all going to happen in court with defense attorneys and public defenders and ADAs, and it clogs up the court's docket. What I want to do is take those low-level, non-violent offenses. Somebody's got a simple possession of a drug. Someone is in the throes of a mental health crisis. I want to put that in a diversion program that it will be housed inside of my office, not in court, right? So these folks will have to come back and forth to South White Street to either attend Narcotics Anonymous or Alcohol Anonymous or anger management, or get intervention services from therapists and social workers, and also do community service, and also pay for those programs themselves, so that programs like Son of a Saint, Youth Empowerment Project, these folks can help us in the criminal legal system, and it also allows us to focus on the more serious cases in court. So let's say if 30 to 40% of those cases are in my diversion program, that means the ADAs that are in court every single day of the week have more time to focus and prepare those trials for the murder cases, the rape cases, the armed robbery cases, and have more success there.
And just to take another moment of time for this, is this under some supervision of judges, or is it something that you and your office says we'll handle it, and then we'll come to the courts if they fail to follow everything you're saying?
It's the second thing you described. The current program is under the auspices of the judges, which still ties up their docket and ties up the ADAs and defense attorneys. What I propose to do is have the carrot and the stick. The carrot is, if you do all of these things to make yourself better, to improve your position and create more purpose in your life, then you don't ever go to court. But the stick is, court's waiting for you, those judges are waiting for you, and you will absolutely go to court if you do not participate and do all the things that are necessary for you.
Do you need any legislative changes in order to enact that, or do you believe it's already within your power?
That power and that discretion already rests within the DA's office. Some DA's offices throughout the state are already doing it. In fact, I want to make it clear, this is not Jason Williams making up or cracking the code. I'm copying the paper of some of the most successful DAs in other parishes and other cities.
Okay. Thank you for explaining all that. Next question. As a serious leadership role in the community, which DA, I think everybody agrees is, what is your vision as DA for the relationship between the criminal court and the district attorney's office, and the criminal court and the citizens, and those being prosecuted, and the victims?
First and foremost, I think that the people of the city need to have a direct line to the DA. They shouldn't have to go through someone to get to the DA. And so I'm going to get outside of court and outside of South White Street and get in schools and get in communities, and also get in the immigrant community as well. There's a number of people who are preyed upon because of immigration status, and they don't report crimes because they're afraid of being deported. I'm working with Congresso and Our Voice Nostra Vote to make sure that we create relationships, and there's going to be a policy of never asking about immigration status, to make sure that folks know, if I come forward, I'm going to be protected and I'm not going to get pulled away from my family. Because when they're not safe, none of us are safe, because the perpetrators are left to reoffend. So the first part is real community engagement. The other part is judges meet en banc ever so often, and I'm going to ask to go to those meetings and participate so we can figure out what we can do better and grade our paper from the previous quarter. Also, I want to create an advisory board for the DA, made up of criminal justice stakeholders, to advise us on whether or not we are seeing the picture clearly in terms of when maybe crimes are spiking. Right now we have a lot of car burglaries. So I want to create a comprehensive strategy with the police chief, hopefully bring the sheriff into the mix, use all of our resources so that our response time to car burglaries is such that we can catch those folks while they're still smashing windows and actually eradicate that.
Quickly, you mentioned with the immigrant community, so they're not afraid to come forward. I want to be clear. I believe I understand you, but I want to be clear. The point is clear to everyone. There are immigrants out there who maybe they don't have their legal status very clear. They are, in the past, by coming forward and saying, I witnessed a rape, I witnessed a murder, I witnessed some terrible crime, they got in trouble because they were asked, well, are you here legally? And then they got grabbed and sent over to the federal eviction authorities.
Exactly right.
And they got taken away from spouses and children, and an awful nightmare ensued because they were trying to speak up for a neighbor, or they were trying to be good Samaritans.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And there's a law. There's laws on the books that can help law enforcement protect immigrants when they are participating to bring the prosecution forward. And we've never used those, and I want to make sure we do.
Okay. Next question. Can you point to a moment in your professional career as an attorney, as a judge, where you believed you had to make a decision, maybe a decision that was going to impact the life of another? Maybe it was a crossroads, and you believe this might help people understand better who you are, and for all the decisions you have to make as a DA, if given that privilege to serve. Some example you can share.
There was a young man I was representing. His name was Bobby Washington. And Bobby Washington was charged with a crime, and the day of his trial, the assistant DA came in and said, "We're going to give you credit for time served." And Bobby Washington had been in jail for almost a year, and he said, "I can't take that deal." And I said, "What do you mean you can't take the deal? You go home today. You're facing a lot of time." He said, "Yes, but I'd be lying. I'd be saying I did something horrible that I did not do, and I just can't do it." I said, "Bobby, you're going home today. You would have already served the time. Who cares what people say about you?" He said, "I care." And so we went forward with trial, and it turned that the witness actually said on the stand that she had actually lied about what happened. The truth came out. He was exonerated. But far too many times, what's going on at Tulane and Broad is someone is scared about the penalty, and they plead guilty to things they didn't do. And so we have to make sure that as we work through this process of being safe, that we're not violating people's rights and cutting their rights short simply under the guise of public safety. It's important to make sure that the system is fair every single step of the way. And that, having that information come out after 5 days of trial was very eye-opening for me, because I thought he made the wrong decision by going to trial until that evidence presented itself. We didn't know it was going to come out.
And just to quickly follow up, as someone who is very familiar with how imperfect any system of justice is, including right there on Broad Street, you know that innocent people who go and take their chances, they can end up in jail for quite a long time, and you in your heart know they're innocent. Juries can convict because they're wrongfully accused, or an overzealous district attorney's office wants to get a conviction on the books, right?
So the power of that office, that's what you're speaking to, and that's why the most powerful law enforcement agency in the city has to be really laser focused on making sure that regardless of the crime, that the rights are protected each step of the way. All due process is there, all constitutional rights are there, because the power is so strong that an innocent person's rights could be lost and are lost on a regular basis.
We have time for one more question. This is a very important discussion. I wish we had a lot more time. But reporter Peyton Locicero from WGNO, we invited her to join us in the conversation, and she asked this question. What is, if you were to win the DA's race, what's the first change or the most significant change you'd want to make to the system?
The first change would be a written policy paper defining what success is for all ADAs, right?
And an ADA for everybody
is an assistant district attorney. That's the folks who represent them and me in court in all 12 sections of court. And I'm going to have a written policy paper that writes down what is expected of them, what they are accountable for, and reminding them of their oath and letting them know that they're going to be held accountable. Because that's the only way to change the culture of the office. Changing the person at the top oftentimes does nothing for the rest of the institution. And that written policy paper is going to be a constant reminder of their obligation to the people, but also to their obligation of the rule of law.
Okay, now we do have time for one little an easy question,
Okay.
and that is, why don't you let the viewers know what your ballot number is, and if you want to take 15 seconds to just make your closing remark.
Sure. My ballot number is 104, 10-4. When I was a little kid, we used to talk about onto those walkie-talkies, 10-4, good buddy. It's easy to remember. And my last pitch to the voters is simply this. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change this system, to make it fair for everyone, but reform it as well, and that is going to achieve public safety. My opponent believes that public safety and criminal justice reform are antithetical, that they don't go hand in hand. I believe we never really get to real public safety until we engage in criminal justice reform that makes sure that your rights are protected, whether you live next to Audubon Park or Joe Brown Park.
Well, thank you, and I'm afraid that that's all the time we have left for this segment. Thank you, Mr. Jason Williams. We wish you all the best of luck. Everyone, please stay tuned for our next segment, where we will be interviewing the remaining candidate for the district attorneys. Oh, actually, no, next segment is actually Criminal District Court Section K candidate. So thank you so much for being here. Everyone, stay tuned.
Thank you, Joe.